Hello everybody, I hope you're doing well today. I will have a timestamp up right now if you're just interested in watching the fights. That will be near the latter end of this video, but you should stick around because we're going to do a lot of talking today about why, at least when it comes to what invaders are using more commonly now at meta level, why you're seeing faith builds so much more. Things have really gotten out of hand when it comes to faith. People have started exploiting it for what it's really worth, and this build has just shot up in usage a ton. So when it comes to what people consider the meta level for invading, usually I'm invading at 125, but that's the dueling meta. When it comes to getting the largest range of players at around meta level, usually what you're going for is about 135, 137, something in that middling 130 range. And the stats I have right here is not the exact build that everybody's using. They're using some variation of these stats here. Not too big of variations, but pushing more so into strength and lessening on, say, dexterity, or going harder into faith. Essentially, what I have right here is going to be sort of the low end in terms of the faith that you're going to see, but that strength and dexterity, as you'll see later, is going to allow me to demonstrate some of the powerful options that this has at its disposal. And something that's also extremely strong is just full sending faith to 80. I don't think it's as powerful as this because you lose a lot of those options that we're going to be talking about, but I mean your damage is pretty crazy. But I think the name of the game for invaders is having a couple options that are extremely hard hitting and then having a lot of situational uses for weapons and spells and whatnot that you may be not using all the time, but when that situation arises, you're going to be very glad you had the extra strength or dexterity to use that specific item. So you're essentially always going to be maxing out Vigor at 60. There's really no reason to not do it unless if you're really quite good at what you're doing and you know that you're sacrificing quite a lot. Everything in this game does too much damage, so you might as well go to the hard cap. As you'll see, it does not matter that our mind is at 10. We have 30 endurance, it's just a comfortable amount for wearing heavier armor and at least moderately heavy stuff. 25 strength, and again dexterity, I will talk about it later. And it is actually 49 faith, but due to the helmet we're wearing, it is 51. So when it comes to your armor, usually, just like always, you're going for quite high poise, and really the only helmet you're ever going to be using is going to be the Haligtree Knight Helm. It gives you 2 faith, and it has good defenses. Really the only things that invaders are going to be looking to use, other than just high poise with this helmet, is going to be the Royal Remain set. If things are getting very bad, say you've run out of Estus and you want to stay in the invasion, no matter what, like you're just sweating your ass off, then having Royal Remains mixed with the Feather Talismans is a very powerful combo, especially in duels, not so much in invasions because you could just get true comboed by multiple opponents, but it's much better to have this set than to not have it. And then the other thing that you will mostly be looking at having is going to be this tier up here, the Crimson Tier Scarab, which by proxy also means the Full Bloom Guardian Garb. These are going to make your Crimson Tier healing a little bit stronger, but these are things that you're not wearing all the time. You are swapping to them when you get a breather, you've taken a lot of damage. If you're wearing these 2 pieces of armor, and then you are wearing the Crimson Seed Talisman, you are going to heal an astronomical amount of HP. So these are, like, in terms of putting on all 3, you're really looking for a moment where there's a break in the action. If not, it's best to just toss on the Crimson Seed. As far as I remember, this makes the Crimson Tier 20% more powerful, whereas these 2 pieces of armor separately make it 10% more powerful. Those numbers might be slightly off, but I do know that the Crimson Seed is the most powerful of the 3. Now, we're going to go through the roster of weapons that you have at your disposal when it comes to a Faith Hybrid build, and truly the amount of coverage and the lack of desiring things that other builds have is truly staggering. And I should have said this at the beginning, but this type of build is essentially a paladin. Like, you're You're using the supportive faith spells because, as we will get to later, there are some options that make your life as an invader so much easier, so much better, and really, unless you're just trying to carve out a playstyle for yourself, usually when it comes to being the invader, trying to use spells and incantations, you can be outnumbered quite easily. So usually you're making some very lopsided build to try and kill people faster than they can deal with it. But this build is the pinnacle of consistency, power, being too powerful, in all honesty, as we'll get onto. And it is just this beautiful culmination of everything that you could possibly want in a build. So we've gone over the armor already. Now we're going to go through the roster of some of the different options that you are looking at. So Misericord, or however you say that, whether you're doing this Flame Art or Sacred Infused, Faith does have two different Ash of War infusions. This is going to be your crit stick, so very powerful. Now, why would you use the Erdsteel Dagger? Essentially, something that you need to understand is that having a dagger in the offhand with certain powerful main hand weapons is one of the most deadly and infuriating combos to deal with. A dagger is able to reaction roll catch people. It is able to be unpunishable in certain instances where you can get an attack in as they're swinging, say, a moderately slow weapon, and you're able to get out. There's essentially no in-lag on the swings of this weapon. And paired with like Curved Greatsword or Halberd, this is a truly terrifying combo because they have true combos with a dagger. There's actually many setups that have a true combo with an offhand dagger, but those are two of the most prominent. Curved Greatswords are going to have very large sweeping attacks and more forward momentum than you'd expect. Curved Greatswords are phenomenal weapons in invasions due to their large arc and their ability to break poise very consistently. Halberds are going to lack some of that forward, horizontal swinging, but you will gain in that a better chase down tool. But I'm kind of jumping the gun here. The Erdsteel Dagger, innately without being infused, has a faith scaling. And what you do is this is your offhand weapon. So let me go to it real quick. You can go ahead and Sacred Blade, right? And now this dagger, whether you're true comboing it or roll catching it or just threatening someone with its presence, this is one of the most damaging offhand daggers you can possibly go with. This hits so hard for something so fast, and that is really valuable. It's perhaps more valuable in duels, but there's no downside to having it in your inventory. There's going to be times where you perhaps are able to single out a single opponent and you're able to chase them, and some of the hits you are going to do this. You're going to make them afraid and get more powerful hits with the halberd, or perhaps it's the exact opposite situation. They're trying to react to the halberd, but you're swiping them with the dagger, etc. And also this, with the poking halberd into an L1, is a true combo. That doesn't mean you should go for it all the time, but it is a powerful, powerful tool in your tool belt. Let's go all the way back up. Blade of Calling, you can use this if you want to. It does hit quite hard, but really the damage-dealing dagger, other than the Erdsteel, is going to be Black Knife because it has the Death Omen effect, or I don't know what its real name is, I just call it Death Omen. It does a ton of damage quickly over time. The damage over time lasts only a couple seconds, but it does do quite a heavy amount, and you still get that effect even if someone phantom hits. Like it phantom hits someone as they're rolling, say there's latency. So very good projectile on the Ash of War, something that you don't need. There's many of these things you don't need, but it fits so comfortably into your inventory, and once again, if you can afford to have it, there's no reason not to. Just fit it into your inventory in a way that feels good to you. Now the straight swords. The coated swords really do steal the show. The coated swords have spent time being banned on competitive ladders because they are some of the longest swords in the game, straight swords. You have the power stance setup, which has some obscenely powerful moves. You have your standing L1, you have the backswing able to catch very reliably, you have your L1s, you have your crouching R1, quite nice. And then for anti-airing people, you do have your running R2. Shouldn't use this too often, but it is the best running attack option for this setup because this attack right here is quite quite crap, in all honesty. But the sheer damage this is able to do, especially when you start stacking buffs, is truly criminal. It's actually insane how much this does. And if the Faith build in terms of attacking options just had this, it would already still be a phenomenal build. But you have so many toys, gadgets, gizmos, spells to work with that you may begin to see why this is the most popular build as of right now, or it's emerging as such. Golden Epitaph, it is essentially an Ash of War stick, giving yourself the Sacred Order effect. The Sacred Order effect in PvP is toned down, however, because of how damage multipliers scale in this game being multiplicative, if you're casting this with other buffs that it stacks with, it is less felt in terms of the buff nerf, if that makes sense. So for buff stacking, this can be quite powerful, especially if you are using, say, your Cerulean Tears or Starlight Shards to get the blue back you need to continue your buff chain. The Michelin Night Sword has Sacred Blade as its innate attack, so you don't have to use this, you can just put Sacred Blade on Noble Slender Sword, but I would personally rather use this for the Sacred Blade, save my Ash of War for, say, another weapon, and then have something like Storm Stomp on one of your Noble Slenders, because Noble Slender Swords are the longest straight sword in the game. Say you, in your inventory, have your main hand Coated Sword, and then very quickly you can swap to Storm Stomp, for example, or Endure, something like that. Endure is essentially just a win button in Invasions, because Hosts and Phantoms don't know how to roll. So very powerful options. These are all phenomenal options. Coated Swords is going to be your bread and butter for this build. There's really no reason to not run it. And this is the weapon that makes hyper faith investment work, like 80 faith, because all you have as a requirement is 20 faith, and the scaling is obscene. And all it does is holy damage. That's why these do so much damage. So we'll go ahead and move on, but yes, this is truly insane already. If you pair the Knight's Greatsword with an Ash of War that works well with this type of build, such as Sacred Blade, Flaming Strike, something on those lines, you have a very competent weapon, very fun weapon that is able to do a lot of damage. You do have more powerful options. Essentially everything is getting outshined by the Coated Swords, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have this. It's a very competent weapon. This is essentially the same thing, but more damage, but less range. So use this if you want to. It has Sacred Blade as its Ash of War. So that's a consideration. The Ordovis Greatsword is why we are pushing 25 strength. This Ash of War is that slam on the ground. The hit of the sword is going to do the majority of the damage, but based on how long you charge it, you will get pulsing shockwaves that come out of it. And so whether you're using this as a get-up attack, so say you just backstabbed your opponent or something, and you're using this as the wake-up attack, or you're just landing it because it does give you a ton of hyper armor, very useful thing to have is, say, like a quick swap from your main hand weapon. Say you're using the Coated Sword or whatever you're using, and then just quickly swap to this and try to catch someone off guard. It's an AoE, so you're able to hit multiple people, gives good hyper armor, does good damage, and, you know, Greatswords, their moveset being buffed as is. You do have, in terms of moveset, better options, but this is still serviceable. You have the infamous Blasphemous Blade. I don't think this thing needs any introduction. This can very reliably two-shot, and it is not hard to make it one-shot based on the buffs you're putting on. So Blasphemous Blade, a true Elden Ring moment weapon. This is one of the ones I would perhaps not consider quite as much. It's kind of this gimmick weapon where what you do is you have like a sort of Wrath of God explosion into a follow-up swing. Don't get me wrong, it does good damage, but it's just more telegraphed and FP than what I would personally care to use. It is an option, though. And then you have Waves of Piss, aka the worst thing to exist ever. Goodbye, goats. Goodbye, goats. Anyway, so yeah, this is actually the longest Greatsword in the game. You're not really using it for just normal fighting usually, though. You can but you don't have to. Essentially, the Ash of War, while not as powerful as it used to be, is still brain dead. It is Omega brain dead. It's free damage, it desyncs, it's truly awful to fight against, but, you know, we're talking about meta here, so we are kind of foregoing what our opponents think of us, partially. So, you don't have to use an Ultra Greatsword, but say you're using one of your self-buffing Ash of Wars on a Zweihander, or if you're pushing more so into strength, then say maybe the Greatsword, maybe you're at a higher level, or you're just going more so strength rather than dex, then you can use the Greatsword. You know, they're just going to do Ultra Greatsword things, and they're going to be fairly good at it. You have the Godslayer Greatsword. This sword has some unique attacks and whatnot. You don't really need to use this thing, it's a matter of do you want to, and if you do and you know what you're doing, it can be quite good. The Malekith Blade does have an interesting Ash of War, but this is not going to be a weapon that is, like, say, making this build. Use it if you want to. You do have to push more into strength than the normal Faith Hybrid, so if you're at a higher level or you're just skewing your build, you can use this, but generally I wouldn't recommend it. 34 strength for a build like this is quite steep. So with 25 strength, you're able to get to 27 very easily with a talisman or a helmet, in which case you would be able to two-hand this, and this for about a minute gives you the Oath of Vengeance, which is going to make all of your stats 5 higher for that duration of time. So considering you're so close to the breakpoint as it is, it's valuable to just be able to go to something like this. Excuse me, not that one. One like this, 27 strength, or the Omen Smirk Mask, wherever it is in here. Something that's just giving a little bit of strength, and there you go, 27. You're able to two-hand it now and get that juicy buff. Now, really, this is a stand-in for any thrusting sword. Usually, you're going to see people that have Quick Step or Bloodhound Step on a thrusting sword. Clean Rot Sword is the longest one, and is, I think, the highest damaging based on what build you're using. But just because of how long it is and how easy it is to catch people with stuff like this right here. Pretend like I have Bloodhound Step. That's a Bloodhound Step. You got essentially the pre-nerf version of the poke attack right there. You can use a heavy thrusting sword. This can be quite good for catching people that are on latency or light rolling. Usually these types of weapons are wanting to be perhaps more so on a full physical build or something on those lines, but you can still make it work. It'll still do good damage. You just won't be getting the same thrusting counter damage that you do normally. But yes, running R2s and jumping R1s such as this is still valuable, even if it's not the best build for this type of weapon. Shamshir is the best curve sword. You will be running either Sacred Blade or Flaming Strike on this generally. Both are phenomenal options. You will do good damage. You will have a very fast weapon with very good backswings. Very fun weapon, in my opinion. Technically, this is the type of build that you would be considering Magma Blade on, but I think this weapon just kind of sucks, honestly. It's so frickin' short, it doesn't even have the good version of the R1s. All it really has going for it is this, and this is just underwhelming, in my opinion. You can use this if you want to. My recommendation is do not, though. Again, like I said at the beginning of this section, curved greatswords are phenomenal. Phenomenal running attacks, more so the R1 than the R2. You have good crouching attacks, and then you're going to be putting one of the two staple Faith Ash of Wars on it, either Sacred Blade or Flaming Strike, and especially if you're running something in the offhand like Offstock or especially Dagger, you're going to have so much success, and these huge swings, like if you have, Monkey Brain hosts that you're fighting against and they're phantoms, you're going to hit them all very commonly, and assuming they're not using too much hyper armor, or really any hyper armor, you're always going to be poise breaking them, so you can do something like this, get a free like 600 on all of the people that are within that range, before they decide, oh wait, maybe I shouldn't be trying to trade with this thing. Omen Cleaver does have higher damage, but it is going to weigh a little bit more, and it's going to have a worse two-handed R2. This has just 0 range, so if you plan on two-handing it, this is more of a consideration. But if you're purely one-handing it, the Omen Cleaver is an option for doing more damage. And I believe the Dismounter is a little bit longer, but it's hard to tell just based on looking at it, but I think in terms of hitbox it is. Also, you could run this as well. I mean, it's a curved greatsword. It's got a unique Ash of War. This has infinite poise while you're in the air, which is quite interesting. But it's also quite heavy, so, you know, by no means a needed weapon, just a fun tool that you can use. So, when it comes to katanas, there's not really anything that I would say is cut out very well for a faith build. You do have the ability to use this, but it is by no means the best build that this can be used on. But I mean, Power Stance Nagakibas can only be so bad. So once again, if you chose to, you could run this, but this is not a standout build for this type of archetype. If you are going to use a Twin Blade, the reason that I would recommend you use it is for its Ash of War. While yes, Spinning Slash is technically an Ash of War that many weapons can get, they're all slightly different based on what type of weapon it's going on. And the Twin Blade version is a very good marriage between speed and forward momentum, and the first and third hit of it will poise break 133 poise. So you can use this as a swap from, say, your setup, say you're using like a very narrow weapon like a halberd, and just hit them with this, maybe go for something like that, that way you catch the roll catch, or full send it if you think they're going to stand and trade. It's by no means, again, a necessity, but if you're trying to be a little bit swagalicious, I'm going to kill myself for having said that. If you're just trying to style on your opponents, then this is a consideration. Technically, this is a faith scaling Twin Blade right here, the corrupted version, the Black Blade. But this thing's so tiny that, I don't know, like, I probably would never use it. This is the longest Twin Blade, and I haven't looked at the numbers, but the damage difference can't be so large, I imagine, that it's actually worth the trade. Technically, you could use Stormhawk Axe on this, but I really don't recommend it. I just thought I'd put it here, but you do have an option that is quite a bit better for this build. We'll get onto that shortly. Sacred Butchering Knife. I mean, if you're going for big weapons, you can, but usually you're just kind of like power stance, jump attack spamming with them, so not a whole lot to see here. Marika's Hammer does a ton of damage in a very wide AoE, and while you're in the air, you have infinite poise. So, in terms of trying to kill people that are being especially monkey brain, putting on the Shard of Alexander mixed with this, and yeah, and a lot of people don't know how to properly roll this too, so you can hit them once, get close to one-shotting them, and then just use it again, because they're panic rolling all over the place. And you can also use this in very claustrophobic areas, making it harder to avoid especially. You do have to be careful though, you can get backstabbed for using this if you're not careful. If you're going to run Great Clubs, the best option is to run 2 of the curved. Running these with Sacred Blade is going to be your best option for this archetype, and you do have this really good crouch attack. The first hit comes out quick, it's not very telegraphed, and if they roll the first one, it is very likely that the second one will hit. You, of course, have your all-powerful big weapon jumping L1, so you have that as well. Great Stars. Now, why do we have Great Stars here? Great Stars is a very unique weapon, and this interaction really only is worth all that much if you are the host, but I thought I'd mention it anyway because it's very interesting. If you have Prelades Charge, you're going to be hitting someone a lot, right? And essentially, the Great Stars is unique because it heals like 1% plus 10 HP for every time you hit somebody. And, you know, that doesn't sound like much, but the thing is that if you're running an Ash of War that hits a lot, say Prelades Charge, and the Swaddling Cloth, if you're, say, like the host or something, or, you know, you're using it against the host and they're just got low poise or something and you manage to get the Prelades Charge going, I mean, you can heal back a lot of HP from this combo. So Prelades Charge, Great Stars, and the Godskin Swaddling Cloth. Very, very good also for, you know, trying to sort of like, almost like if you play MTG like Lifesteal, I don't mean to like make it seem like it's super powerful, but it is a very interesting thing that is worth looking at on this type of build. The Cranial Vessel, it's not that good. It's just a funny meme weapon. You do a big boom. This is just for being funny, more or less, as of the current situation. So this right here, you get the unique Ash of War, but that's not really the main reason that you're using it. The real reason is because while many great clubs have this R2, this one is unique because for some reason it's got level 3 stun, whereas all the others have level 2 stun. What does that mean? Well, level 3 stun is significantly longer of a hit stun before you can get out of it. So if you hit somebody with this right here, you get a true combo into another R1. So running this with, say, like an off-stock or something, and sometimes going for the off-stock, sometimes going for this, you can have quite a bit of success with. It is, once again, not a maker or breaker of this type of build, but it is something fun that you can do. It is also not, say, a really optimal build for this at all. It's just that you have the ability to use it. It has a tiny bit of phase scaling. There are other builds that are more complementary to this by quite a large margin. But once again, we're talking about the diversity of the options you have. Devourer's Scepter. This one's weird. It is the longest Great Club, which is valuable. So if you have the stats to use this, that's quite nice. And it does have this unique Ash of War that essentially is almost like Gravitas in a way, but what it does is it life steals all the things around you, which is more valuable if you're the host. So really, if you're the invader using this, you're using it because it is the longest Great Club. And if you're on the home team, you can use this because you are able to hit, say, like a lot of small enemies and get back a ton of HP. Power Stance Spears, very cringe, beta mill, but, you know, sometimes... I mean, we're talking about meta right now, you know? Like, you have to understand, we're going over all of the cringe right now because we're talking about why this is so powerful, right? And so, Power Stance Spears, phenomenal attack, okay attack. I mean, really, that's all you need. Like, you have weapons this long, this fast, even if there are going to be builds that, you know, are full physical and get more counterattack damage, you really can't argue with how much damage this does when charging down your opponent. Even if you're using a different combination of spears, like, this is just... it's unbelievable how good this combination, just Power Stance Spears, is at just being unfair against your opponent. You do have Power Stance Great Spears, of course, sort of the signature. This is a signature setup for essentially every single build, and why hybrid builds for Faith and Intelligence is a very, very considerable option. Extremely fast crouch attack, very high damage jump attack. You are able to animation blend the crouch attack very well. You do have a respectable R1, running R1, and jumping R1. Yeah, phenomenal setup. Put any Ash of Wars that are extremely powerful on it, and it will do you well. Some of the most common ones are going to be Quick Step and Bloodhound Step, because when you Quick Step or Bloodhound Step forward, it gives you the crouch attack, which is, you know, the bread and butter of the weapon. And, you know, there's also the fact that it is going to do so much poise damage that they have to hyper armor it to somehow get through it, but, you know, you're going to be hitting everybody really hard. You do have the Tree Spear as well as an option. It does take a lot of strength that, you know, if you're swaying more in that direction, you can do that. But really the reason you're using this is for this right here. Very long range Ash of War. It does have a long windup, but it is a very large hitbox that goes very far. So this is a fun option to use, but, you know, really you're not going to be using that too often. But it is still a great spear. Great spear. So if you were to use two of these, I mean, you know, once again, you have Power Stance Great Spears, so nothing to complain about there. Vikes are a dexterity scaling weapon mostly, but the reason that you would consider using Vikes is if you are fighting Cancer players that are going to have very high latency, they're using like a VPN, or they just live really far from you. You can pull out these, madness them, and then once it procs, do that. You're going to be doing significantly less damage with these weapons in comparison than a dexterity build, but you're using them for the madness. If you're considering them here, you're not using them for the damage. And there's really not many good ways of doing proc damage, like poison or Scarlet Rot on a Faith build. That's really its only one downside, is that you don't have many options in that realm of cutting through someone's latency. So, while not a one-size-fits-all situation, the Vikes can do that. Definitely one of the more powerful things you can do is going to be your Poking Halberd, whichever that is, the Banished Knight or the normal Halberd right here. Well, the normal Halberd or the Banished that you see right here. You're always going to be using Flaming Strike, Sacred Blade, or Black Flame Tornado, which we'll be talking about shortly. And you're going to be using Offstalk or Dagger, and you have a stupidly powerful setup. It does not really matter. Like, just solo Halberd is such a powerful weapon in invasions. Its only downside is that, you know, your options for hitting horizontally are quite slow or not very damaging in the case of the crouch attack. But yes, phenomenal weapon, even if it's just for this attack alone. It has plenty of other great qualities about it too. This right here is a true combo, dink, and then you could say follow it up with something like that. Something you can catch people with very commonly is going to be Flaming Strike after a running R1. And if you're holding a dagger in your offhand, you know, perhaps they're trying to roll out of the way of that as fast as possible, and the timing lines up perfectly to catch them with a Flaming Strike. You can run Volgar's Militia Shodel, and the reason you would use this is for doing damage through shields. You would put something like Royal Knight Resolve on this, and then make it either fire or sacred. Yeah, so that's what you would primarily be using this for. If you were to use a Scythe just for the general purpose use of using a Scythe, you would be using one of your Faith Scaling Ash of Wars on something like this, based on if you're going more Strength or Dex, or, you know, just an even layout of the two would make the decision of using the Grave Scythe or the normal Scythe your consideration. You do have two Faith Scythes to choose from. This is very spammable and does quite a lot of damage, so if your opponents are not focusing on you, you can start blasting them with the Halos, and then you have this. This is a very powerful weapon. You don't see it too often among PvPers. You see it more often with PvEers. But what really does this one so much good is Angel's Wings. You see PvEers spam it all the time, but really it is a super powerful Ash of War. Not only does it make it to where your opponent can't use their Crimson Tears for a short duration, but you have infinite poise while you're in the air, and you have the first really fast hit, which true combos into the latter hit. So phenomenal Scythe that it kind of has a bad rap due to, you know, PvEers using it quite poorly, just spamming the Ash of War over and over. But I mean, if you use it intelligently, yes, it's a very strong weapon. This whip, I don't like it. This whip, I mean, it looks cool, but it really doesn't do all that much. Running Cestus, you should use most likely Perseverance, and then whether it be fire or going to be sacred, you infuse it with one of the two, and that's a good endure option. You have the very fast R2. It does not vortex like it used to, but you still have good other moves like your running attacks, right? And then this is a passive Poise Breaker all the way up to 133, so quite good. And then this is for funny memes. This is not good. I just thought I would bring it up since it's here. Don't use that if you're trying to, you know, be optimal. It's just lay funny. With as much strength and dexterity as we have, we get the goated invasion weapon, which is going to be a Greatbow with Golem arrows. Yes, this is an instance of a weapon essentially entirely relying on you duping. Yeah, I mean, you're really not going to get any amount of golem arrows by playing normally. You do have to have somebody dupe the arrows with you if you want any substantial amount. It is unfortunate, but you know, Elden Ring is poorly designed in this aspect where some of the best stuff you have no way of getting reliably without spending a ridiculous amount of time farming for them or running through the game over and over. So quite unfortunate. Rain of Arrows is your best Ash of War for a Greatbow because it is going to send down a flurry like so. With the Golem Arrows, all of those AoE hits are going to transfer over to that Ash of War. If you are aiming at somebody that has a roof over them, it hits much faster. I don't know exactly why, but it will shave off like half or 2/3 of the time it takes for it to start striking down, and it is brutal. So phenomenal weapon. And also, if you're playing in an area with high jumps that you can take, usually you get stuck in that animation where you're like breaking your knees or something, but you can one-hand a Greatbow like so, and then take the fall, and then two-hand it right as you're about to hit the ground. And while this wasn't high enough of a drop to demonstrate, you know, the painful knees-breaking animation, if it were high enough, that would still work. You just got to time it right. Holy Crossbow. You know, if things are getting particularly cancer, you could use the sleep arrows and do some wacky shenanigans. Do I like it? No. Is it cancer? Yes, but we're covering it anyway. If you're running 20 strength specifically, you would want to go with the hand ballista, which allows you to two-hand it. If you're running 23 strength or more, you would go with the jar cannon, which does more damage, but is going to have a higher strength requirement. When you're running it with such essentially non-existent damaging incantations, your seal selection, as far as I'm aware, does not affect anything. You have essentially only a couple shields that are going to be super necessary, really. Spiral Horn Shield, if you're fighting somebody that is doing a bleed build or frostbite, this is going to help quite a lot in combination with the respective talismans. When you are at low HP, these are going to give you an attack and defense buff, very powerful. I have Holy Ground on this, which is an Ash of War that creates a perimeter where you rapidly regenerate HP. You should have it, very powerful. You should have Carry and Retaliation on an invasion build because it is going to be just a great parry by itself, but also the ability to say no you to mages in certain situations can be a tide turner. And then the Turtle Shell, really the reason that I'm using this the majority of the time is for chasing or running away. It is going to make you regenerate your stamina faster. So if you have that and then you're running the Turtle Talisman, you are going to be regenerating your stamina very quickly. And so that's a really good option whether you're running away or chasing somebody to try and outrun them. The Icon Shield is essentially the Ethereal Oak Shield of this game. It's going to regenerate your HP slowly, about 2 HP per second. When you stack a bunch of regenerative effects over and over, or on top of each other, I mean, this is going to make your HP come back very quickly. Especially, like, you're really only going to be doing the strat that I'm talking about if you get a break in the action, or you've run out of Crimson Tears, excuse me. But very, very good idea to have this on a build. If you're pushing more so into strength, you do have Great Shields at your disposal. Great Shields are very powerful, of course, having such high guard boost. And then if you have high enough to run the Great Shield, the Erdtree Great Shield, then you can use this as sort of a quicker know-you, Carry and Retaliation. So when magic is headed towards you, use the Ash of War and bounce that right back at them. Now, when it comes to Ash of Wars, really there's going to be only a couple options you're looking at. So sometimes people will use Cragblade, however, this is not the best type of build. This is not really all that viable on a sacred build, on a faith build, excuse me. You can use it, it's not going to be great. Endure, one of the absolute strongest Ash of Wars you could be using. You should have multiple weapons, or at least a single weapon that has this on it. Whether you're putting it on a weapon to trade with your opponents, in which case you're going to win the trade, or you're using it to get a Crimson Tier chug or run away, whatever it is. Super, super, super valuable. You should have it, and there's no getting around it. Now, I don't know where it is in my inventory, but Braggart's Roar does increase your attack and defense, so you could put that on an offhand Great Spear or a Noble Slender Sword, something like that. Then if we go down a little bit further, Quick Step, absolute staple of try-hard invasions, and even more staple than that is Bloodhound Step. Essentially, what makes these so powerful is that on latency, they're borderline, if not completely unpunishable. And when you are pressing the button to dodge with your roll button, you have to both press the button and release it, meaning that if you're trying to react to something, there's a chance that you just get hit because you didn't release the button quick enough. And also, this game is phenomenal about dropping your inputs, so it is a good idea to have Quick Step and Bloodhound Step options available. That way you can not only react to something technically faster, because it's just as you are pressing your left trigger that you get one of these dodges. They also animation cancel. They're very hard to punish, especially if you're doing it reactively. You can really be an absolute pain in everybody's ass with these. Let's go down the list. Storm Stomp, this is a consideration on certain trading setups. However, this loses some of its value in invasions in comparison to duels. So I would not favor this over Endure, but if you have, say, an inventory setup where you can afford to have this and Endure, then this will have times where it will be more favorable. Generally, Endure is going to have 80% of the time more effective as the trading option, but there's going to be a 20% of the time where this is more effective. RKR, it got nerfed. No one uses it now. Still super powerful, though. And now we get to the bread and butter of the fire aspect of the Faith build. The Faith build is not limited to just doing sacred damage, which is so valuable. You are able to do fire, which is for strength, or you can do flame art, which is for faith. And so this means that if you're fighting somebody or an enemy that has really high faith or sacred resistance, you can swap to the fire and you are able to do good damage. And one of the things that is so underrated about a faith build is that you have access to some of the most high value Ash of Wars in the game. Sometimes when you're looking at specific other archetypes for a build, you're really struggling to find Ash of Wars that are going to work all that well for your build. Because the thing you have to keep in mind is that when you are using an Ash of War, if it is sort of like cross-infused, say it's Flaming Strike on like a strength weapon, as in it's infused with heavy, it's not going to do as much damage. And if you are not having stats distributed into the stats that this innately scales with, it'll do less damage. So Flaming Strike is going to do less damage on a keen weapon on a dexterity build by quite a bit than a fire variant on a strength build or a flame art variant on a faith build. So you do get that innate scaling with such a stupidly powerful Ash of War. Super, super valuable. You have Pilates Charge if you're using the cheese with the Great Stars like I was talking about. And this right here is one of your one-shot capable things, like one of your best things for just dispatching someone ridiculously fast. I don't think it gives you hyper armor, or it gives you very little, so you have to be careful with the timing, or you need to like use Endure and then swap to this weapon, whichever one you have it on. But this scales perfectly with a faith build in terms of its damage, and it already does obscene damage if you're not scaling with it properly. When you're using it on this build, it will one-shot, and so many builds that are competently made. So this is a phenomenal, phenomenal thing to have on a weapon close by in your inventory. You will get so many kills from, say, just running around a corner, they don't see you for a second, and they run straight into death. This is a stupidly powerful one-shot button. Sacred Blade, in terms of your sacred damage, is essentially almost all that you're going to be considering. This is, again, a stupidly high value Ash of War, because you are either hitting someone with a long range projectile that does have its problems. It is, reactable and whatnot, but, it should be reactable, but it does do good damage. But the thing is that if you hit with it up close, you can hit with both the projectile and the blade, which does a lot of damage. It also gives stage 3 poise, if I'm not mistaken, meaning that you are able to hyper armor quite a large variety of attacks that would be hitting you, which is super, super valuable. And even if you don't manage to hit your opponent with it, you still sacred infuse your weapon, and that skyrockets a Faith build's damage capabilities. Just like how Flaming Strike gives you the flame infusion on your weapon for a while, this one gives you sacred. And this is really what makes a Faith build just like, this is the gigantic cherry on top. It is so, so good. It is truly phenomenal. Super high value Ash of War. You're going to be using this Ash of War on so many weapons in your inventory. Truly, truly amazing Ash of War. These are all generally irrelevant. Let's keep looking. These are just general shield ones and whatnot. But those are going to be your 2 bread and butters. You're going to have, well, technically 3. The true bread and butters are going to be Flaming Strike and the Sacred Blade. And then your one-shot bread and butter is going to be Black Flame Tornado. And then the other ones that are considerations are going to be Ashes of War that are phenomenal on every build. But it's not like you're losing some type of damage. These ones aren't made to deal damage. Like, this isn't doing damage, this isn't doing damage, Endure's not doing damage, but, that means that they don't lose any value on being on a build that's not, say, the innate infusion of the Ash of War. But what really sends this build over the edge is going to be the supportive incantations you can use. So, now there are going to be other ones than what I'm showing here, but I would probably say that these are going to be the most used ones generally, and so we're going to go over these. So, Black Flame's Protection gives a gigantic physical damage negation when you use this, and all of these over here, if you look at them, are going to cost 30. This is a stand-in for the upgraded version of the Divine or Holy Damage Negation one. I don't have it right now, so this is just a stand-in. Essentially, whichever one you choose, say you see your opponent using something and you go behind a rock or whatever it be and hide and go ahead and pop one of these, you will make your defense against that thing so high that it really helps tip the tables in your favor when it comes to damage. This is able to negate so much of what you're going to be fighting, whether it be physical, magic, lightning, holy, flame, it does not matter. And then you have Golden Vow. Once again, the attack and defense buff are going to be reduced for PvP. However, the thing is when you are stacking buffs and whatnot, they do stack multiplicatively, excuse me. And the thing is notice the FP costs 47, 30 on all of these. And when you have 10 mind, you have 78. So you can use this plus one of these other ones, and you don't have to upgrade your mind at all. You have one left, you go ahead and use a Cerulean Tear, or you Starlight Shard, whichever. You also have any of the heals. This is, of course, the most powerful one in terms of its healing capabilities, but the FP cost is atrociously high, so it depends on what you're trying to do. You have Blessing of the Erdtree. Once again, extremely high FP cost, but a very, very powerful HP over time effect. However, the most practical one is going to be Bestial Vitality. Its FP cost is 18 in comparison to 60, so you're able to spam this many times even though the HP regeneration per second is lower. And then I always like to have Rejection. You never know when you're able to use this and just kill someone instantly because they fell to their death. Like I said, there are other ones that you can consider, but then you're more so looking in the range of worse options of what I showed you or side grades to them. I can't believe I forgot to mention this. You have Protection of the Erdtree, which is absolutely something to stand in. Like if you were to do something here, I'd probably do something like that, and have that line up of spells. And then from there you're looking at damaging ones, but once again, that's not the point of this video, showing the damaging incantations. But yeah, you have so much going for you. Like, you are getting these defensive, supportive, overpowered, frankly, supportive incantations, and it's using the same stat that is building the outrageously good damage you're doing. So, super powerful. But with that being said, I know that was a ton of talking. If you've made it this far, I hope that you've learned something. I tried to make sure that I went over everything. And this is what the inventory is going to look like for this demonstration. Obviously, this is not all the tools that I talked about. You don't have to go with everything at your disposal, just the things that feel comfortable to you, or just what you're trying out at a given point in time. I think this will be plenty powerful enough to work with what we're trying to show here. Plenty of different options. I'll go ahead and show what some of the Ash of Wars look like real quick, right, as you can see here. And just for the simplicity sake, like looking at it, I've kept it within a single area where there's no scroll wheel and whatnot. So if you want to copy this, you absolutely can, but you can absolutely do as many or as few weapons as you choose to. But yeah, let's see what we can't get going for ourselves. See that they are in fact above us. Looks like that is our host. We can go ahead and do this ordeal right here. Get all these ridiculous buffs going. And let's go ahead and harass some people. Interesting choices made by our opponent right there. Quite powerful Ash of War, as you could see. Did a ton of damage. There is our host, it looks to be, and he is making a very bad choice right now. Let's give him what for. Oh, he ran sideways a little bit. Sir, I implore you, please do not do this. You are about to get yourself killed. Obviously, he didn't want to let us demonstrate the power of this build. Clearly, he saw what we were running, and he said, no, we're not dealing with this. Let's see if we can't get some people that pose a little bit more of a threat to us. Now, they're already right here, obviously, so we're going to run away for a moment, long enough to get our buffs. It's not necessary that we get these, but it is going to make our lives so easy in comparison to otherwise. Wow. Look at that damage. Oh, I expected him to be right behind me. Okay, he rolled that properly. Alright, get him out of the air. That does not true combo. Oh, we are stuck in the wall. Let's see, they want me now. I'm stuck in the wall. Let's jump over here. Oh, hello everybody. How you doing? Oh, that's a knee breaker? That's unfortunate. Alright, that guy fell to his death. Epic Gaming. Why are you running in here, brother? Alright, well, that was intelligent. Intelligent gaming, 100%. Alright, Mr. Necro. Let's get it. Let's first get tabs on where they are. Oh, okay. Oh, we see that he has Moonveil, so we're going to choose to Barrier of Gold. Pop that. Pop our flask. Okay, now that we've got that going, let's see, it looks like the host went downstairs. Let's see, probably wants to use Moonveil immediately. Yep. Swap to our chase down option and get him immediately. I mean, you saw it. You saw how much damage that was. And look how little damage he did to us in return. Well, let's see what we got here. Bonfire. Oh, I see him over there. You're not fooling me, sir. I don't know if he's a mage or not, but we'll go for Black Flame. Gee, I wonder where they are. Okay, he hyper armored that. Very epic gaming from our opponent, but I don't know what he was planning on doing, but you know, whatever. He was an epic gamer. He was out of our league. Uh-oh. Okay, looks like he is at the site of grace, so let's go ahead and make our way there. Looks like he's summoning up his party, whether they'll be gankers or just normal PvEers. We just saw what he looked like. He failed another one, so we should take our opportunity and beat him up. Oh, looks like he's running the same build as us, essentially. Stay on him. And there you go, GG, sir. He was running the same build, but we got our hits in before he did, and we did not give him enough space to reconsider life. So, you know, very epic gaming. Oh, looks like this is the same guy. Seems like he got help this time, so... And he was using essentially the same build, so we're going to have to see how powerful his plans are. Go ahead and pop him for using that. He rolls in. Pop him with that. Go ahead and free aim it. Not with the expectation of hitting it, really, but just to throw the idea out there. Oh, we just saw him use the flame defense buff. That one. Okay, that didn't hit him. And we're gonna run off. I pressed the roll button, but whatever. If we can drag them over here, we might be able to get something going. Oops, I pressed the wrong button. Uh-oh. Alright. Let's see. Oh, he's trying to cut us off. Get out of there. Don't got much blue left. Okay. Put that on. Let's do a little bit of parkour right now. We're gonna do this trick here. Let's start in with the mirror match. There we go. I was intentionally. Okay, fair enough. Oh. He's gonna be going for that. Yep. Oh, that's all gonna combo. Woo! Nope. I don't want it. And I feel like he would point down on us, so we're going to point down on him. GG's, guys. Hope you had fun, because I did. That was actually quite fun, actually. Alright, everybody. I hope that you enjoyed this demonstration. There are many, many possibilities for this build to do, and this is just merely a couple of the strongest options you have. This is a insanely versatile, powerful build. It's not going to be your free cheat code for winning every single invasion. You're still going to have plenty of invasions where your opponents are using equally powerful stuff as you, they outnumber you, and you still die. But it is okay, because if you're using something this powerful, you really are essentially just natural selection, and it's going to be the top 10% or so of ganks and whatnot that are going to really still be giving you problems, like making it still feel unfair. Like when you're using something like this, things that you would normally be using and make make it feel like you just can't do anything against your hosts, this is the type of build that creates possibilities. So I hope you enjoyed. I maybe will be doing something like this for different archetypes and whatnot if you guys enjoyed this insanely long breakdown. But just the message to take away from this is, based on how you skew it, you know, it kind of tips and turns, but the Faith Hybrid is truly one of the most powerful builds that you can create in the game as of the current moment. Have a nice rest of your night, guys. Peace out.